I told the story to Joe, and I never told this one on the air, did I? The weird thing. I guess this falls under the category of how your life changes in a remarkable way through a series of events that seem completely disconnected, but then all of a sudden your life moves into a entirely different direction than you could ever possibly imagine through some bizarre series of events. It's a long title for it. So I went to my father's funeral, and there was a whole bunch of guys that I'd heard about. My dad would talk about different people, and then this one guy walks over to me. I'm getting a drink at the bar, and it's an Irish wake, so he's getting loaded, telling stories about my dad. This one guy comes over and goes, "So you look like your dad." I said, "Oh, thanks." He said, "Your dad got started at IBM. He became a real hot shot at IBM. You know that all got started?" And he introduced himself. He worked at IBM as well. And I said, "No, I never heard that story." "Your dad never told you that one? Your dad told stories all the time." I said, "I never heard this one." He said, "Well, here's what happened. IBM had made a call on the Department of Licensing in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And it was going to be a really big deal that Harrisburg was going to stop using typewriters and typing in people's names and their addresses and their birthdays in those little pieces of paper, and they were going to automate it. And IBM went in there, and I think Univac might have been the other competition. There were two people at the Department of Licensing, an older gentleman and a younger gentleman, that would be making the decisions as to who they would go with. Would it be Univac or IBM? So they send young Jack Curley down to Harrisburg to make the call, the sales call. And my father was a very glib guy and liked to crack a lot of jokes. The young guy really liked my dad. The older guy didn't like this guy coming in there thinking he's all this and that. So it was going to be the decision between the two. The old guy and the young guy would get together and make the decision. Would it be IBM or Univac? And this would be an amazing thing for a state the size of Pennsylvania to decide to move into the automated age of the 1960s. It's going to be a big, big deal. So the decision would come down to the older of the two, and it would look pretty. It was almost a foregone conclusion that the older guy just didn't care for my father very much, like the older salesman from Univac, and was going to go that direction. And the decision would be made on a Monday. Well, on a Sunday night, the older gentleman that worked for the Department of Licensing in Harrisburg, that was leaning more toward Univac than to the young upstart salesman from IBM, my father, got into an argument with his daughter. It became quite violent, and she reached into this drawer and pulled out a knife and stabbed her father in the chest, killing him. Well, of course, the entire Department of Licensing in Harrisburg was thrown into a state of mourning and shock at the loss of this older gentleman. He died, and then within 2 weeks, they delayed the decision on Univac or IBM. So it fell upon the shoulders and the responsibility of the younger individual that was working there. And he liked my dad. So called my father up and said, "Jack, we're going to go with IBM." And that was a gigantic sale for a young salesman from IBM, and was really the beginning of his career. Because then after he got that, then they put him into other things, and he made his way all the way up into to White Plains and to big management. I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, there was the fight, and she stabbed her dad and killed him, and that's why your dad got that account, and that's how his whole career started off."
Wow.
So and it's one of these things, right? If she hadn't had this dispute with her father, if she hadn't reached into the drawer and taken the knife, and then the older guy would have gone with Univac, and my dad would not have gotten that son. Now, maybe he would have succeeded somewhere else along the line, but that was a thing, according to the man at the funeral, that shot him into outer space with IBM's ability to be able to have a salesman like Jack Curley make calls on great big accounts like that.
Wow.
Isn't that strange?
That's incredible.
And there's so many things, it's stuff in your life that you're driving down the road and you happen to stop at a light earlier, and why you stopped at the light. If you had left the house a few minutes earlier, you would have been caught in, I don't know, a tree coming down, or all those events. I had talked about this because of that Flight 261, the one Alaska Airlines, I think it was it was in 2000. It was late January, and it took off from Puerto Vallarta. And I was supposed to be on that flight in the last minute. Myself and Kevin Straley changed flights and flew out on Sunday morning instead of the 8:35 flight out of Puerto Vallarta on that Monday. And that was the plane that flew inverted, and then everybody on board died. But we were not going to, we were scheduled to be on that one. At the last minute, we made a change because Kevin wanted to get home to his wife, Sheila, and she wanted him home. And I said, it's up to you, Kevin. If you want to go home early, we'll go home early, or we'll take the regular flight. Well, the flight attendants and they were all sitting there at the hotel, and they said, oh, you got to go out with us tonight. It's so much fun. Don't go out. Don't leave on Sunday. Come out with us and fly back with all of us on Monday. And I turned to Straley. I said, it's your call. What do you want to do? He said, oh, my Aunt Sheila's really mad at me. I better go home. I said, okay, I'm going to go home with Straley then. And we called Alaska Airlines, and we switched the flight.
And those flight attendants that were trying to get you to stay and party, they were on the flight.
Everybody was on there,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. Just your life, you just don't know and why you're here for whatever reason. Find it.